Our next guests are among the growing number of parents faced with the daunting challenge of raising a child with autism. As many as 1.5 million Americans are thought to have some form of the complex developmental disability, which affects an individual in the areas of social interaction and communication. Experts say the incidence of autism is growing by 10 to 17% each year. We'll find out more. Let's take note with Scott and Susan Camazine. Their 5-year-old son Connor was diagnosed with autism before the age of 2. Scott is currently writing a book about his experiences with autism and about the learning program he and Susan have developed for their son. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you, Patty.
It is rare these days not to know someone who's raising a child with autism. Before Connor was born, what, if anything, did you know about this complex neurological disorder?
Really nothing at all. Not at all. When we thought about autism, we thought about Rain Man. That was it.
That's right.
That was it.
And even in medical school, they don't really teach you very much.
And now you are a medical doctor, you're an entomologist as well. You've devoted, the two of you as a team have incredible time working with Connor once he was diagnosed, and you're also writing a book. Can you tell us something, Scott, about the book you're writing, what the goal is of that?
You know, once you have a child with autism, the way you deal with it, it's a very sort of grassroots operation, and parents are helping other parents. And once you get involved on these discussion groups on the net, there's a lot of communication, and we found ourselves repeating the same thing over and over again to lots of parents. And I decided what we needed to do was just sit down and put it all together in one place so that we could basically say, hey, here's the book. This is what we did, it's not our program. It's not a different program than anyone else. I mean, it's very much based upon the sort of the most recent research and training in autism, development and teaching.
Now, you discovered, Susan, you have an older daughter, Kayla, so you had some experience with a normally developing child. And I think early on you started to see things in Connor that you thought were a little bit different. When did you first start to ask questions?
Well, I think we knew at about 4 or 5 months that things weren't developing as normally as they had with Kayla. Connor was in a daycare situation with a babysitter who had had lots of experience with young children, and she mentioned to us that she was concerned with his being so placid. And when she mentioned that, Scott and I both agreed that he was awfully quiet, awfully easygoing, a little bit too much so. And at a 6-month well baby visit, I mentioned that to the pediatrician. And again, I was reassured that that's probably not a problem. I had a precocious first child, and this was a boy.
A girl,
things were going
right.
to be so quiet, we had to sort of just wait and see. But we didn't want to wait and see. He wasn't able to sit up at the 6-month well baby visit. And rather than wait and see, we referred him to the infant evaluation program.
And I want to follow up on that, not waiting and seeing, and how important that has been in Connor's progress. But I wanted to talk first about his first Christmas, which you remember clearly.
Yes, his first Christmas, well, that was actually when he was 3 months old. And I guess maybe some of our concerns went right back to that first Christmas. We spent the entire day with family and friends, very busy, and Connor spent almost the entire day in a crib in another room away from everyone and quiet. And when I would check on him, he was always awake, just not there, not present, not wanting to be part of what was going on. And again, I was grateful. It was easy to have a nice, quiet baby, but at the same time, it wasn't right. And we knew that.
So very early on, you started working with a physical therapist because he wasn't
Right.
sitting up well. And by the time he was a year, you were working with speech therapists and developmental education experts. Tell us a little bit about how important that team approach is.
Well, the team approach is everything. We can't do it by ourselves. As parents, we guide the team, but we can't do it without everybody on the team. We had speech therapy, we had developmental education, physical therapy, all kinds of services, and at about 2 years, we began to work with more therapists on the team.
Now, I think it's probably been said to you at this point, Connor has made so much progress from when he was 2 years old. There's eye contact, there's affection, there's engagement with others. In fact, you said some people may look at him today and say, was he really ever autistic?
Yeah, he was.
And he still is. And he is.
And he still is. Still a strange boy, but and you know we still have lots of problems to deal with. But in school and playground, he's pretty much a normal kid, right, Connor?
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
Now, this is a spectrum disorder, meaning that it may present itself in different ways, and it's mild and severe. It can be mild to severe in children, but it does. There do seem to be certain hallmarks: repetitive motion, communication delays, those sorts of things. Can you describe a little bit about some of the things that Connor did and still does?
Well, like many kids with autism, he's fascinated, at times obsessed with things that spin around. Ceiling fans. What about toilet bowls? What do you like to do?
My remote goes down there.
It goes down, it goes round and around and around, right?
What do you do when it
and
spins?
what do you do when it goes around and around?
I fly.
Show me what you do.
I jump.
And then what do you do with your hands?
What do you do when you see something spinning?
Yeah.
And what do we say when you're flapping?
You're flapping.
Yeah.
Just clapping.
Is it hard not to flap?
Then now you're Connor.
Hey, Patty's asking something.
Is it hard not to flap?
Do you like to flap?
Yeah.
When, you know, I remember he used to be fascinated watching TV, and if we'd walk in front of him, he'd grab your leg or whatever part was blocking his view and just like push it. He never thought to look up and look at you in the eye and like say, hey, why is your leg in my way? He would just push the leg out of the way. It was like we were just objects. And, you know, I remember Susan saying, you know, I forget how you put it. She said, you know, we're a family, but we got this stranger in our house.
Yeah. That's exactly what it felt like. We had Kayla and Scott and I, and we were bonded together as a family. And then there was this person who was with us, but he really wasn't with us. He wasn't, not at all.
And as you said, there's a stranger among us. But to talk about what this has been, because so much time and energy is invested in getting Connor's communication skills and interpersonal skills up to speed. What impact does this have on an older sister?
What impact does it have on an older sister? It's been very hard. We've worked very hard to make sure that Kayla is a part of everything that we do with Connor. We talk to her, we tell her that she's his lead therapist. But she has often been on the outside of things, and it is very hard. It's a big challenge for any family that's doing what we're doing to keep every sibling in the family engaged. She's not here with us today. I'm sure she's not going to be happy about that. That's just part and parcel of being the sibling of somebody like Connor.
Now, one of the things you said, Scott, that you keep in mind, some sage advice you heard that is something that you remind yourself of frequently, is that the outcome you achieve with your autistic child is largely determined by three factors. You say the quality of teaching, the intensity of teaching, and the innate ability of your child.
Right. We were very lucky. We started on one kind of ABA program.
When you say ABA?
That's applied behavioral analysis. It's really the only approach that's been shown to work. And that program initially, it just didn't work out. I mean, serendipitously, on one of these discussion groups on the web, the verbal behavior group and that DTT, NET group, we found out that there was a conference being given by a person by the name of Dr. Vince Carbone. And he's been the one that's been championing this particular approach, this verbal behavior approach. And it happened that he was giving a conference in St. Louis where my sister lives. So we went out there, and I can easily say that two-day conference was the most important 2 days of my life. Because it really, we came back from that and we said, we're scrapping our other program, this is what we're doing, and since then everything has...
And we should say, when he was 2, he didn't have the vocabulary of a 2-year-old, but now at 5 and 3 months, he does have the vocabulary of a typical 5-year-old.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when he was 2 years old, he couldn't say mama, couldn't say dada, and he only knew how to say 5 words.
And in fact, he didn't look at you at that point.
That's right.
Now, in addition to sort of stumbling on a program, a learning program that worked for you, and a program that you say you really do 24/7, the education of Connor is something that you do all day, every day. You also stumbled on the diagnosis.
That's right, and it was a stumbling. I had gone to a forum for parents of children who have developmental problems and mentioned my concerns about Connor, but I could talk about the different delays, but couldn't talk about why it was happening, and that was what was so challenging for us.
No one had yet said autistic.
No, not a word, no, and it wasn't until another parent heard me give our story that she approached me and she asked me to think about the fact that he might be autistic, and that's what got us started looking at Connor in a different way.
I want to give an email address for anyone interested in talking with the Camazines, our guest today, about their experiences with Connor. You can email them at camazine@adelphia.net. We'll keep that on the screen for just a moment. But I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the resources that have been important to you in working with Connor.
Certainly the most important thing was finding a consultant who knew about this verbal behavior approach. We went to this conference and I immediately realized that this is the approach we had to take. The leader of that conference told me that he had a waiting list of 2 years before he could even begin to see us, and that 2 years is a lifetime for a kid with autism that's 2 years old. So we were lucky in that respect. We immediately bought sort of the only sort of handbook available for this approach, a book by Partington and Sundberg called Teaching Language to Children with Autism and Related Disorders. And we just immediately started with that, and then we were very fortunate in finding a consultant who was an expert in this particular area.
We literally have just a couple of seconds remaining, but just how optimistic are you about Connor's future?
Very, 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 yeah.
I'm just hoping he's not going to be any more weird than I am. But you can't imagine the amount of relief that we feel today just having to deal with sort of almost normal problems rather than having a kid who is banging his head on the floor and tantruming and the like.
And on that note, we're out of time. Thank you all so much for being with us today.
Thank you,
We've
Patty.
been talking with Scott Camazine and Susan Trainor and their son Connor. For Take Note, I'm Patty Satalia.
A copy of the program you've just seen can be purchased through Penn State Media Sales at mediasales.psu.edu or by calling 800-770-2111.